Hi everyone, this is Kalyan Kumar and welcome once again to Chemistry Universe. This is part 8 of the isomerism series. In the last one, we talked about various projections and how to interconvert one projection into the other. And I had also mentioned at the end of the video, last video, that in this particular video, we're going to look at how to identify these very similar molecules, the enantiomers. They're just the mirror images of each other. They have the same bonds. They're attached to the same atoms. They're attached with the same number of bonds. And the only difference is left versus right. One group on the left of this molecule and one group, the same group happens to be on the right of the other molecule. So such a small difference gives us a lot of problem regarding identification of these molecules. Suppose I want to ask you to draw the structure of a particular isomer, of a particular enantiomer. And so it is very important for me to make you understand which particular enantiomer I'm talking about, because it is just a question of left and right. So there are various ways of doing that, and this is exactly what we're going to do. This is the part 8 of the series, and this is relative configuration DL and absolute configuration RS systems. So using these systems, we'll be able to identify the molecules. So let's get on with the show, part 8 of the isomerism series. So there we go. There are two types of nomenclature for chiral molecules that distinguishes between a pair of enantiomers. This is exactly what we are looking at. These are the DL system and the RS system. So let's start with the DL system. Now there is no particular method to look at a given molecule and be able to predict whether it is a dextrorotatory or a levorotatory compound. Now, this is something which I've already mentioned when we began optical isomers, that it is not possible simply to look at a molecule's configuration, to look at a molecule's Fischer projection and determine whether it is going to rotate dextro or levo. Though there are certain rules which have been formulated, empirical rules, which I will cover in the 8B part of this video, wherein it is possible to some extent in certain cases to be able to look at a molecule and predict the correct rotational direction of the plane polarized light. But these are empirical rules. There is no particular logic behind them. It is based on observation. So that being aside, it is actually not possible with any concept being used to look at a molecule and predict whether it is going to rotate dextro or levo, that is clockwise or anti-clockwise of the plane polarized light. The original method of indicating enantiomorphs or enantiomers was to prefix each one with a small d or small l based on dextro or levorotatory, which suggests that the molecule rotates the plane polarized light clockwise or anti-clockwise respectively. So small d and small l are the way in which dextro and levo were earlier signified. Van't Hoff in 1874 also introduced a new system called the plus and the minus for again the clockwise and anti-clockwise rotation. Plus for clockwise and minus for anti-clockwise. Now Fischer realized that when multiple chiral carbons are present in a molecule, it would not be possible to find the optical rotation of each chiral carbon individually in that same environment. So what Fischer figured was that if there is one chiral carbon, one can say, okay, if this chiral carbon rotates clockwise, then its mirror image is going to rotate anti-clockwise. And if there is one chiral carbon, one will be able to say that if let's say a particular group is on the right and another particular group is on the left, if that is dextro, when I interchange those positions, it will automatically become levorotatory. But what happens when you have multiple chiral carbons? When you have multiple chiral carbons and the molecule is dextrorotatory, if I only change the left and the right of one of the chiral carbons, obviously the mirror image of this molecule will be all right will become all left and the all left will become all right. But suppose I don't change all the right to left, I change one of them, two of them, three of them. So it will not be able to, it won't be possible for us to predict in which direction will the plane polarized light be rotated. Will one chiral carbon having a particular group on the right, and if I change that to the left, the compound itself changes because now they are not enantiomers anyway. So the compound itself changes. So in that scenario, it will not be possible to find the optical rotation when you have multiple chiral centers and you interchange the groups in just one or two of them. Fischer was more interested in finding stereochemical relationship between naturally occurring sugars rather than their individual optical rotation. And he resolved this problem by designating the following stereochemical isomer of glyceraldehyde as the D isomer. So he considered this molecule, which is glyceraldehyde, where the OH is on the right and the H is on the left and the CHO on top and CH2OH at the bottom, as D-glyceraldehyde. And its mirror image obviously will be the L-glyceraldehyde. And here please remember I'm using the small d and the small l. Now, so what Fischer said that I'm not interested in finding the optical rotation due to each chiral carbon and then probably guess what will be the final optical rotation. He said, forget about optical rotation for the time being. He said, let me make an assumption. And the assumption is, he drew glyceraldehyde with CHO on top, CH2OH at the bottom, OH on the right, H on the left. And he said, let me assume it is dextrorotatory. I don't actually care what it is. Let me just give it D, arbitrarily. Obviously, its mirror image will become L. Later on, however, the isomer that he had marked D coincidentally turned out to be actually the dextrorotatory. That, of course, was a coincidence. But he was not interested in that. He then synthesized other carbohydrates from the D-glyceraldehyde and called all of those as D isomer. So, glyceraldehyde is the simplest form of carbohydrate, sugar. So, he said, when I synthesize any other higher carbon or higher molecular mass carbohydrate from D-glyceraldehyde, then all of those must be designated as D isomers. And anything that I synthesize from the L-glyceraldehyde, all of them would be the L isomer. Suppose he is able to synthesize a particular carbohydrate from D-glyceraldehyde, let's say D-glucose, after a series of steps. Any form of glucose derived from D-glyceraldehyde will be designated as D-glucose. Anything from D-glyceraldehyde becomes D, anything from L-glyceraldehyde becomes L. So, it is this D and L is actually the relative configuration. It's not an absolute one. He just arbitrarily chose one as D. And because that is D, the other one is L. Relative. He therefore proposed that the prefixes D and L should refer to stereochemical relationships and not to the direction of rotation of the compound. So for him, as I said, the actual rotation of the compound was not important. What he wanted to say was that anything synthesized from D should be D, anything synthesized from L is L. So these represents stereochemical relationships. The D of an isomer, the mirror image of a D isomer will automatically be L. You could have as well called the initial glyceraldehyde as L, and then everything would have become interchanged. So there was no absolute way of determining what that chiral carbon's configuration is. Remember, configuration is like the cis and the trans. We could clearly see this is cis, this is trans. They were not relative. Cis was based on a certain definition. Trans was based on a certain definition. We cannot call the cis as the trans. So absolute configurations were here given based on their relationship with each other. It was relative to each other. Later on, to remove any confusion over the relative configuration and direction of optical rotation, the carbohydrates were then designated as capital D and capital L. So later on, he said, okay, I might write, as far as the glyceraldehyde is concerned, that was a coincidence. Whatever he assumed as D became D-glyceraldehyde. But he knew that as he synthesized more and more compounds from D-glyceraldehyde, it is also possible that they need not all be dextrorotatory. So again, he was not interested in the optical rotation. So he said, look, what I'm going to do is, small d and small l will initially representing only optical rotation, dextro and levo. So he said, to remove any confusion, I'll still call it D and L in my mind, but to remove confusion from anybody else's mind, he said, okay, let me call it capital D and capital L, so that later on I can always say that if anything which is D isomer, capital D isomer, ends up rotating the plane polarized light anti-clockwise, I'll still say, look, it is only capital D, it's not small d. So to remove any confusion, he replaced the small letters with the capital letters. To designate a molecule as D or L capitals, first draw the Fischer projection with the parent chain drawn vertically from C1 based on the IUPAC rules on top. What does it mean? What he basically means is that you have to draw the Fischer projection and you have to draw it in such a way that the C1 carbon, the one which is designated as C1 based on the IUPAC rules, should be on top. And the vertical chain should be the parent chain. That means maximum number of carbon atoms, or the ones which contain the principal functional group, and then containing maximum number of carbon atoms. And then if you were to draw it like this, and since he was basically dealing with carbohydrates which have OH, he said, look for the OH group on the last numbered chiral carbon. If it is on the right side, the molecule is designated capital D. If it is on the left side, it is designated as capital L. Say for example, this molecule. Now remember, we had drawn the Fischer projection of this in the previous video. Its Fischer projection was this. And this, by the way, is glucose. Now what do you observe here? C1 is on top because out of all the functional groups here, CHO has the highest priority in IUPAC. So C1 is on the top, and if you notice the vertical chain, in the vertical chain, the parent chain is this vertical chain ending at CH2OH, maximum number of carbon atoms. So maximum number of carbon atoms top to bottom. And then he said, look for the OH group on the last numbered chiral carbon. Now, if I were to number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this carbon is not chiral because it has got 2H. But this carbon is chiral and it is the last numbered chiral carbon. And then he said, if the OH group is on the right side, the molecule is designated D. And if it is on the left side, it is designated as L. So here it is, OH is on the right, so we call it D-glucose, derived from D-glyceraldehyde. And it has been found that the naturally occurring sugars are the D ones, D enantiomers, while the naturally occurring alpha amino acids are the L enantiomers, alpha amino acids. Alpha amino acids are the monomers of proteins. Now, of course, we just said OH on the last chiral carbon is right, then we call it D. But what happens if it is having an amino acid where you have NH2 instead of OH? Then he said, okay, if NH2 is on the right, the last chiral carbon, then it is D, otherwise L. So for amino acids, we designate the molecule as D and L based on the position of NH2 group on the last chiral carbon. So this is automatically D. It is D-alanine. And this guy is its mirror image, L-alanine, moreover NH2 is on the left side. So this is relative configuration. There is no absolute term. We are not designating any configuration for each chiral carbon. We are designating the entire molecule as D or L, irrespective of where the other OH are, irrespective of what is happening to the other chiral carbons. We only look at the last one. So this is one way of naming them. And remember, when it comes to naming, it doesn't really matter what logic you use, as long as you can easily distinguish the name of a molecule, especially in this particular case based on stereochemistry. So now we have another system, the IUPAC system. And this system uses what is known as RS system. And in this system, we give absolute configuration to each chiral carbon. So now it is not molecule, it is exactly based on a given molecule. And the need for this was primarily because the relative configuration given by Fischer was a little arbitrary. First of all, you have to look for OH. And OH is on the right, it is D. But what about the other OH? So when the other OH go left and right, the name of the molecule itself will change. The molecule name will change. So it was a bit of a confusion. And moreover, what happens if it doesn't have an OH, or for that matter NH2? Then you can simply not give D and L. So it doesn't work for all of them. So the RS system was invented. And it uses the same CIP rules that we saw in geometrical isomerism to give the configuration as E and Z. So RS system of configuration. The RS system of assigning configuration to a chiral carbon is absolute, unlike the DL system used, which is relative to the sugar from which the given molecule originates. Each chiral carbon can be designated as R or S based on the same CIP rules used for designated molecules of geometrical isomers as E and Z. In contrast, the DL system gives the configuration to the entire molecule but not to the individual carbon atoms. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to give the configurations R and S depending on various projections. Remember, we saw in the last video various types of drawing the diagram of a molecule. In your exams, you may be asked to designate a molecule as R and S by different projections. You can be given wedge dash, you can be given Fischer, you can be given Sawhorst, you can be given Newman. So we will look at trying to figure out R and S for each type of projection that we have. So the first one is RS configuration of wedge dash projection. Now here, first give the priorities to the 4 groups attached to the chiral carbon based on the same CIP rules. Observe the molecule from the side opposite to the lowest priority group. So remember, when we give priority groups, we say 1, 2, 3, 4. Because here now you're going to have 4 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4. Observe the molecule from that side where 4 is farthest away from you. If the arrangement of the top 3 priority group is clockwise, then the chiral carbon is designated R or else S. So let's say take an example and understand. Look at this molecule. Now first of all, I want you to pause the video, use the CIP rules and give priority to each of the 4 groups. So now let's see. Which one do you think gets 1? Obviously, OH, highest atomic number, 1. Which one gets 2? Now here this is carbon, here this is carbon, but attached to 3H, attached to O, obviously 2. And out of H and CH3, definitely CH3C is higher atomic number 3, and there's 4. And now remember the meaning of this. These 2 lines are on the plane of the screen, plane of the sheet. This is coming out of the plane. This is going behind the plane. Now you have to observe the molecule from the side where 4 is farthest away from you, which means here, the opposite of 4. Where that means you need to observe from here. So if you want to observe from here, now go from 1 then to 2, then to 3 and go back to 1. In which direction do you think your arrow moves? 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Don't you think it is anti-clockwise? It is designated S. Okay? Let's take this molecule, which is 1. First give priority. Cl is 1, OH is 2, CH is 3, and H is 4. And where are you going to observe it from? Opposite to 4. So you're going to observe it from here. Now go from 1, then to 2, then to 3. Can you see it is going clockwise? R. Now let's take this one. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Where do you see it from? Bottom. Opposite to 4. So go from 1. So I go from 1 to 2. Then 2 to 3. Which direction is this when you look from the bottom? It is not R. You know, right now from the top, if you view, it look like R, clockwise. But remember, you're viewing it from the bottom. So when you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, it is anti-clockwise. The molecule is S. So now let me give you a tough one. Wow, multiple chiral centers. So I'm going to look at each carbon chiral one at a time. So first let's look at this one. So it's like this. Now just give the CIP priority. Which is 1? Obviously OH. Which is 2? Now you have a fight between CH3, tertiary butyl and this carbon. But remember, this carbon has a O. Tertiary butyl has only 3 carbons attached. So this one gets 2. And 3 obviously will be tertiary butyl. And 4 will be CH3. Where would you look it from? Here. Grow from 1 to 2 to 3 to 1. Are you not moving clockwise? R. Now let's look at the second chiral carbon. Remember the molecule was this. Second chiral carbon. Can you see this? Now give the priority first. Pause the video. Do it on your own, R and S. Now obviously OH is 1. And this fellow is going to be 2 because it has got a OH. Then obviously this guy is going to get 3 because of NH2. And then CH3 gets the 4th one. Where do you see it from? Here. Now remember, these 2 are in plane of the paper and this is going behind. So you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. Now it may be a little difficult because you got to observe it from here. But as you're observing it from here, now remember this 4 is coming out of the plane of the paper. Okay? It's coming out of the plane of the paper. This is going back. And these 2 are in plane. And this is 1. So 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to 1. So this is S. Because from the top, from here if you see, it looks like clockwise. But from here if you see, it is going to be anti-clockwise. Now let's look at the third chiral. This one. Priority sequence. NH2 gets 1. This OH fellow gets 2. The ET gets 3 and the H gets 4. This is pretty simple. Looking from here, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, it's pretty simple R. So this molecule that was initially given to you is R, S, R. And if you want to know how we name it, well, you give the numbers for generating IUPAC name. And then if you see carbon 2 is R, then you say 2R, 3S, 4R, blah, blah, blah. And then you give the IUPAC name. So now let's look at the RS configuration in the Sawhorse projection. So suppose I was given this, the Sawhorse projection, and I have to look at I have to find out the configuration of these carbons. So here, this chiral carbon, now which is 1 OH, 2 will be obviously this bond, 3 is CH3, 4 is here. So where will you look from? Here. Now go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, anti-clockwise. In the next one, 1 is OH, 2 is again this bond, 3 is CH3, 4 is here. Where do you see? Again you see from here. 1 to 2, 2 to 3. Can you see again is an S? And remember, rotation around a bond does not change the absolute configuration. If you rotate this, it's not going to change it. Say for example, the same molecules I rotate in such a way, that I bring the hydrogen of both groups down. It look like this. Just check. Rotate this H by 60, OH by 60, CH3 by 60, you'll get this. Here again, rotate H here, CH3 here, OH here, you get this. So now you should ideally get S here also because it's the same molecule. So again, let's give the priority rules. 1, 2, 3, 4. Where do you look from? Top. Now go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. Don't you think it's anti-clockwise? In the other one, 1, 2, 3, 4. Look from top. Again 1 to 2, 2 to 3. 1 to 2, 2 to 3. From top view will be anti-clockwise. S again. So now let's give RS configuration in a Newman projection. Well, it's pretty simple. Simply convert the Newman into the Sawhorse. First convert the Newman projection to Sawhorse and just give the configuration to Sawhorse as we had done earlier. So I'm converting this Newman to Sawhorse, and then if you want, you can use the same logic. You can bring both the hydrogens down, because bringing the hydrogen down becomes easier because you can look from top. So here the first chiral carbon, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. From the top. Remember, you're seeing it from the top, and therefore when you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3 and back to 1, it is R. And then in the other one, 1, 2, 3, 4. Looking from the top, 1 to 2, 2 to 3. From the top, it is anti-clockwise. S. Now let's try and give it to cyclic structures. This is a little bit tricky, but you'll get used to it. Say for example, I have this one, and there are 2 chiral carbons in this one and this one. So what I do is I draw it in such a way so that I can, because they're not exactly vertically straight line, okay? So one is on top like this, one is at the bottom like this. So 1. Now tell me which is 2. Obviously this bond is 2 because this carbon is attached to OH. So 2, 3 and 4. So where do you look from? Top again. Now go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. From the top, S. Look at this one. Second one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at it from here. Now go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, back to 1. It is again S. If you're not able to figure this out, go back, pause the video, do it on your own, try as much as you want. Let's look at this one. It's got two carbons which are chiral. So I'm redrawing it like this. Give priorities. 1, 2, because this carbon has OH and Cl. 3 and 4. Where do you look from? Here. So now go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. From the top, it is R. And if you look at this one, 1, 2, 3 and this guy is 4. Where are you going to look from? Here. Now go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. From the top, it is R. Alright, now let's give it to the Fisher projection, which is perhaps the simplest. So whenever you get a Fisher projection, doesn't matter which group is where. Give priorities. Now what do? Now you have to make 2 interchanges. Remember we discussed even interchanges gives you the same, odd interchanges gives you the mirror image. Make 2 interchanges, but you do it in such a way, bring 1 on top, bring 4 at the bottom. So by 2 interchanges, bring group of priority 1 on top and 4 at the bottom. So what I do is I first interchange 1 and 2 so that 1 comes on top. Then I interchange 3 and 4 so that 4 comes down. So based on that, don't you get 2 here and 3 here? Now go from 1 to 2 to 3. It is very simple because it's already flat. We made it into a flat, so it's much easier to look at the R and S here. So whenever you have any problem in any of the others, try and get the Fisher projection. It will be much easier. So this guy is R. Now the question is, you might have a question here. What happens if 1 is already there on top? Then within 1 interchange, I can bring the 4 down. If that happens, make sure you change the horizontal groups. If 1 is already on top or 4 is already at the bottom, then any single interchange will bring 4 at the bottom or 1 on top. Then make the second interchange by changing the position of the horizontal groups. It is very important that you have to make 2 interchanges. Don't make 1. Don't make 3. Make 2. Why? Because I say so. Remember, these are only way of naming, and in naming just follow rules. There's no logic behind it. So make 2 interchanges because even interchanges always gets you the same thing. By bringing 1 on top and 4 at the bottom, it is much easier to deal with the R and S. So 2 interchanges are must. So if you have a molecule like this, give priorities 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember 4 is already at the bottom. So first change this 1 and this 2. That will get 1 interchange and you will be able to get 1 on top. Then flip 2 and 3. So 2 comes on the left. And when you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, it's anti-clockwise. S. So that is the end of part 8, where we gave the DL and the RS system of configuration. And when you name a molecule, you name it like this. You say 1R, 2S, 3R, 4S, blah, 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 and then you write the IUPAC name. So that way, when a person is drawing the structure, by knowing the IUPAC name, he knows which group is attached where. But by knowing R and S, which carbon is R, which carbon is S, it will be easy for him to understand, easy for him or her to understand which is on the right, which is on the left, which is top, which is bottom, stuff like that. So stereochemistry is revealed absolutely by using the RS system also. So with that, we come to the end of this video. I hope you were able to understand what I was talking about. As I always say, watch them as many times as you want till you get it. And if you don't, we have the forum for the asking questions. You can do that and then we'll clarify as early as we can. With that, this is Kalyan Kumar signing off. Have a great day. Goodbye and thank you for watching this.